You clicked on this video because someone, maybe your doctor, maybe a well-meaning family member, maybe even a pamphlet in a waiting room, told you that fruit is off the table when you have diabetes, and you believed it. Maybe you've been avoiding it for months, maybe years. You gave up the bowl of berries in the morning. You stopped reaching for an apple in the afternoon. And all this time, you thought you were doing the right thing. Today, I'm going to show you why that advice, while it comes from a good place, may actually be working against you. Because here's the truth. Not all sugar is the same. Not even close. And the idea that every diabetic should avoid every fruit across the board is one of the most oversimplified pieces of health advice that gets repeated over and over again, even though the science tells a very different story. I want you to think about something for a second. If fruit were truly dangerous for blood sugar, all fruit categorically, then why do some of the longest-lived, healthiest populations on the planet eat fruit every single day? Why do cultures in the Mediterranean, in Japan, in parts of Central America, where diabetes is far less prevalent than here in the United States, incorporate fresh fruit into nearly every meal? The answer is not that they're ignoring the risks. The answer is that they understand something about fruit that most American dietary advice has failed to communicate clearly. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand it too. In fact, I'm going to tell you something in the final minutes of this video that might completely change the way you think about your A1C and how certain fruits can actually support it moving in the right direction. So stay with me. I've spent a significant amount of time reviewing clinical research, nutritional biochemistry studies, and peer-reviewed work on glycemic response in adults over 60. And what I've found is both reassuring and, honestly, a little frustrating, because so much of this information is available, yet it rarely makes its way into the conversations that matter most, the ones between patients and their doctors in a 15-minute appointment. Before we dive in, if you're finding this useful, take 2 seconds right now, hit that subscribe button so you never miss a video, and give this a thumbs up. It genuinely helps more people like you find this content. And drop a comment below. Tell me what country you're watching from. I'd love to know where our community is tuning in from around the world. Hold on a second. Before we go any further, I've put something together for you. It's called the Glucose Paradox. It's a free guide on blood sugar and diabetes, and you can grab it for free through the link in the description. I'm telling you this now because I want you to finish this video with a concrete tool in your hands. To get it right away, just click the link in the description, head over to my site, and drop your email. You'll receive the guide in your inbox a few minutes later. But I don't want to take up any more of your time. Let's get back to the video. Let's start with the foundation, the biology that makes this whole conversation make sense. When most people hear the word sugar, they picture the white granulated stuff in a bowl on the kitchen table. And when they hear that fruit contains sugar, they assume the effect on the body is the same. But that assumption skips over something critical: the delivery system. Table sugar, and the refined sugar you find in processed foods, enters your bloodstream almost immediately. There's virtually nothing slowing it down. Your pancreas scrambles to produce insulin, your blood glucose spikes, and if you're diabetic or pre-diabetic, your body struggles to manage that spike effectively. Fruit is an entirely different biological package. Inside every piece of whole fruit, alongside the natural sugars, you have fiber, specifically soluble fiber, that physically slows the rate at which glucose is absorbed into your bloodstream. You have antioxidants and polyphenols that interact with your metabolic pathways in ways that protect, rather than harm, your insulin sensitivity. And you have water content that dilutes the sugar concentration, creating what researchers describe as a buffered glycemic response. The glycemic index, or GI, is the most useful tool for understanding this. A food with a high glycemic index causes a rapid, sharp rise in blood sugar. A food with a low glycemic index causes a slow, steady, manageable rise. Table sugar has a glycemic index of around 65. White bread is up around 70. But most whole fruits sit between 20 and 50. And as you're about to discover, the 7 fruits I'm going to walk you through today are specifically among the lowest on that scale. Now let's talk about the 7 fruits. I want to go through each one with some depth, because understanding why these fruits are safe and actually beneficial for diabetics is just as important as knowing which ones they are. The first group is berries. I'm grouping them together: blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, and blackberries, because they share a remarkable biochemical profile. Their glycemic index ranges from about 25 to 40, which is extraordinarily low, but the number alone doesn't tell the whole story. Berries are exceptionally rich in a class of compounds called anthocyanins. These are the pigments that give berries their deep blue, red, and purple colors. And over the past 2 decades, a growing body of research has established that anthocyanins do something remarkable inside the human body. They improve insulin sensitivity. What does that mean practically? Insulin sensitivity refers to how responsive your cells are to insulin's signal. When sensitivity is high, your cells take in glucose efficiently, and your blood sugar remains stable. When sensitivity is low, a condition called insulin resistance, which lies at the heart of type 2 diabetes, your cells stop responding well. Glucose accumulates in the bloodstream, and your pancreas has to work harder and harder to compensate. Anthocyanins appear to interfere with that cycle of resistance. They interact with cellular receptors and signaling pathways in a way that helps restore responsiveness to insulin. For a diabetic, that's not a minor benefit. That's addressing one of the core mechanisms of the disease. Blueberries, specifically, have been studied in randomized controlled trials focused on adults with insulin resistance, and the results have shown meaningful improvements in insulin sensitivity among participants who consumed them regularly. Strawberries contain additional compounds, including ellagic acid, that have anti-inflammatory properties relevant to metabolic health. And raspberries and blackberries are among the highest fiber fruits you can find, with raspberries delivering around 8 grams of fiber per cup. There's one more thing worth mentioning about berries. They are remarkably beneficial for eye health. Diabetic retinopathy, damage to the blood vessels in the retina caused by chronic high blood sugar, is one of the most serious complications of diabetes. The anthocyanins in berries have a protective effect on retinal tissue, supporting the integrity of those tiny, delicate blood vessels. For a diabetic senior, that's the kind of protection that matters. Aim for about a cup of fresh or frozen berries as a standard serving. Frozen berries, by the way, are nutritionally equivalent to fresh, sometimes even better, since they're frozen at peak ripeness. The second fruit is the apple. Humble, familiar, and deeply underrated, apples contain a specific type of soluble fiber called pectin. Pectin is remarkable because it forms a gel-like substance in your digestive tract that physically slows the movement of glucose into your bloodstream. It essentially acts as a buffer, a physiological speed bump that smooths out the glycemic response to everything you eat, not just the apple itself. When you eat an apple before or during a meal, the pectin it releases into your gut can moderate the impact of the other carbohydrates in that meal. That's a significant and often overlooked benefit. Apples also contain a flavonoid called quercetin. Quercetin has been studied extensively for its anti-inflammatory properties, and chronic low-grade inflammation is one of the underlying factors that makes diabetes harder to manage. By helping to reduce that inflammatory burden, quercetin supports better metabolic function over time. One important rule with apples: eat them whole, with the skin. A significant portion of the pectin and quercetin is concentrated in or just beneath the skin. Peeling an apple or drinking apple juice, which we'll talk about shortly, strips away most of what makes it beneficial. A medium apple has a glycemic index of around 36. That's lower than many vegetables. The third fruit is the pear, and pears deserve far more attention than they typically receive in conversations about diabetes and diet. A single medium pear contains approximately 5 to 6 grams of dietary fiber. To put that in context, the average American adult gets around 15 grams of total fiber per day, well below the recommended 25 to 38 grams. One pear moves the needle significantly. And that fiber, much like the pectin in apples, plays a direct role in slowing glucose absorption and supporting healthy gut bacteria, which, as we're increasingly learning, has its own connection to metabolic health and insulin sensitivity. Pears also contain copper, a trace mineral that is often overlooked in nutritional discussions, but plays a meaningful role in glucose metabolism. Copper is a cofactor for several enzymes involved in energy production and metabolic regulation. Deficiency in copper has been associated with impaired glucose tolerance, and many older adults are mildly deficient without knowing it. The glycemic index of a ripe pear is around 38. Eat it with the skin on, as you would with an apple, and pair it, pardon the pun, with a small handful of walnuts or a tablespoon of almond butter to further blunt the glycemic response. The fourth category is citrus fruits, particularly oranges and grapefruit. And here I want to spend a moment on grapefruit specifically, because its biochemical profile is genuinely fascinating. Citrus fruits are well known for their vitamin C content, but vitamin C, ascorbic acid, does more than support immune function. It plays a role in protecting the endothelium, the thin layer of cells lining your blood vessels, from oxidative damage. Diabetes significantly increases oxidative stress throughout the body, particularly in blood vessels, and this is part of why diabetics face elevated risk of cardiovascular disease. Regular consumption of vitamin C-rich foods helps counter some of that oxidative damage. But grapefruit contains something beyond vitamin C. It contains a compound called naringin, a flavonoid found almost exclusively in grapefruit. Naringinin has been shown in research to interact with liver function in a way that influences glucose production. Your liver, you may know, doesn't just process glucose, it actually produces it, a process called gluconeogenesis. In people with type 2 diabetes, the liver often overproduces glucose, particularly overnight and in the fasting state, which is one of the reasons why fasting blood sugar can be elevated even when a person hasn't eaten anything for hours. Naringin appears to help modulate that process, supporting the liver in producing less excess glucose. One important note, grapefruit interacts with a number of medications, including some commonly prescribed to diabetics and to older adults for cardiovascular conditions. If you're taking any prescription medications, check with your doctor or pharmacist before adding regular grapefruit to your diet. This is not a reason to avoid it automatically. It's simply a reason to have a brief conversation first. Oranges, meanwhile, are often avoided because people assume they're high in sugar. A medium orange has a glycemic index of around 43 and contains about 3 grams of fiber. The combination of fiber, flavonoids, and hydration makes the whole orange a very different metabolic experience than orange juice. The fifth fruit is cherries, and they are among the most surprising entries on this list. Cherries have a glycemic index of approximately 22. That is lower than almost any other common fruit. And the reasons go beyond just their sugar content. Like berries, cherries are rich in anthocyanins, but cherries have an additional property that makes them particularly interesting. They contain compounds that appear to stimulate the pancreatic beta cells, the cells responsible for producing insulin, to increase their output naturally. Studies have explored cherry extracts in the context of insulin secretion, and while this is an active area of ongoing research, the preliminary findings are promising for people whose bodies still produce some insulin but need support optimizing its release. Cherries also contain melatonin, the hormone most associated with sleep regulation. This might seem tangential to diabetes, but it's actually quite relevant. Poor sleep is a significant driver of blood sugar dysregulation. Sleep deprivation raises cortisol levels, which in turn raises blood glucose. It also impairs insulin sensitivity. A growing body of research links chronic sleep disruption to worsened glycemic control. The melatonin in cherries, particularly tart cherries, won't replace good sleep hygiene, but it may offer a gentle, natural complement to it. A standard serving of about 12 to 15 fresh cherries is appropriate. Frozen tart cherries are widely available year-round and work beautifully in smoothies, or as a topping for plain Greek yogurt. The sixth fruit is avocado. And yes, avocado is botanically a fruit, a berry, technically, and it belongs on this list for reasons that are almost the inverse of every other fruit we've discussed. Most fruits derive their benefit partly from what they contain alongside their sugars: fiber, antioxidants, polyphenols. Avocado has an almost negligible sugar content to begin with. Its glycemic index is effectively 0. Half an avocado contains less than 1 gram of net carbohydrates. For a diabetic, it creates essentially no glycemic response at all. What avocado does offer is an abundance of monounsaturated fatty acids, specifically oleic acid, the same type of fat found abundantly in olive oil. Monounsaturated fats have a well-documented effect on insulin sensitivity. They help maintain the fluidity and flexibility of cell membranes, which in turn improves the ability of insulin receptors on those cells to bind insulin effectively. Better receptor binding means better glucose uptake, which means lower blood sugar. Avocado is also rich in potassium, a mineral that helps regulate blood pressure, particularly relevant for diabetics who face elevated cardiovascular risk. And it provides a significant satiety effect, meaning it keeps you full. That matters because hunger is one of the biggest drivers of poor food choices. When you're genuinely satisfied, the craving for something sweet or processed diminishes considerably. Add avocado to salads, spread it on whole grain toast, or simply eat it sliced with a squeeze of lime and a pinch of salt. It is one of the most versatile, nutritionally dense foods available to anyone managing blood sugar. The seventh fruit is kiwi, small, bright green, and absolutely packed with nutritional value that is often underestimated. Kiwi contains a compound called inositol, specifically a form called d-chiroinositol, that has a direct relationship with insulin receptor function. Inositol acts as a second messenger in the insulin signaling pathway. Think of it this way: when insulin binds to its receptor on a cell, it doesn't directly open a channel for glucose to enter. Instead, it triggers a cascade of internal signals that ultimately result in glucose transporters moving to the cell surface. Inositol is one of the key molecules in that internal cascade. When inositol is present in adequate amounts, the signal travels efficiently. When it's depleted, as it can be in people with diabetes and insulin resistance, the signaling is impaired, and glucose uptake suffers even when insulin is present. By providing inositol, kiwi essentially helps your cells hear and respond to insulin's signal more clearly. This is a mechanism that most people have never heard of, and yet it represents a real biochemically grounded benefit of regular kiwi consumption for diabetics. Kiwi is also an exceptional source of vitamin C, actually higher per gram than oranges, and contains vitamin K, folate, and a range of antioxidants. Its glycemic index sits around 50, slightly higher than some of the other fruits on this list, but its fiber content and the inositol effect make it a net positive for blood sugar management. 2 medium kiwis is a standard serving. Eat them with the skin if you can tolerate it. The skin is edible, slightly fuzzy, and contains additional fiber and antioxidants. Now, knowing which fruits to eat is only half the equation. How and when you eat them matters enormously. The single most important rule is pairing. Never eat fruit alone on an empty stomach if you can avoid it. When you combine fruit with a source of protein or healthy fat, a small handful of walnuts, a tablespoon of almond butter, a few slices of cheese, a serving of plain Greek yogurt, the protein and fat slow gastric emptying, which means the entire digestive process slows down. Glucose enters the bloodstream more gradually. The glycemic response is flattened. You avoid the spike and crash cycle that leaves you hungry again an hour later. Portion control matters as well, though not in the way most people think. The goal isn't deprivation. The goal is consistency. A standard portion, 1 medium fruit, or approximately 1 cup of smaller fruits, like berries, provides all the nutritional benefit without overwhelming your glycemic regulation. Eating 3 apples in one sitting is a different metabolic experience than eating 1 apple with a handful of almonds. Avoid juice. This point cannot be overstated. When fruit is juiced, the fiber is removed. The very thing that makes whole fruit safe, the fiber matrix that slows glucose absorption, is gone. What remains is essentially a concentrated sugar solution with some vitamins. A glass of orange juice can contain the juice of 4 to 6 oranges, with none of the fiber, and it hits your bloodstream in a way that whole oranges never would. If you want the flavor of fruit in liquid form, blend whole fruit into a smoothie rather than juicing it, so the fiber remains intact. Finally, consider timing. Eating fruit as part of a meal, or immediately before a meal, tends to produce a more stable glycemic response than eating it in isolation between meals. The presence of other foods, protein, fat, vegetables, creates a buffering effect that moderates the overall glucose impact. Some people find that eating a small serving of berries or a kiwi about 30 minutes before a larger meal actually helps reduce the overall glycemic response to that meal, partly due to the fiber and partly due to the volume effect on gastric emptying. The long-term picture is this. When you replace processed sweets and refined carbohydrates with these low glycemic fruits, you do several things simultaneously. You reduce your total sugar load. You increase your fiber intake, which directly supports gut health and metabolic function. You flood your body with antioxidants and anti-inflammatory compounds that protect the blood vessels, nerves, and organs most vulnerable to diabetic damage. And you give yourself a path toward lower A1C levels that doesn't feel like punishment, that actually tastes good and provides genuine satisfaction. That last point matters more than it might seem. Sustainable dietary change requires that the new habits be livable. A diet that makes you miserable is a diet you won't maintain. But when you discover that you can eat a bowl of blueberries with Greek yogurt, or a sliced pear with a few walnuts, or half an avocado with your lunch, and that these choices are actively helping your blood sugar rather than hurting it, the whole framework of managing diabetes starts to feel different. Less like a cage, more like a set of choices that genuinely serve you. And hey, if you made it all the way here, please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Hit the like button to let me know this was worth your time, and leave a comment below. Tell me what country you're watching from. Seriously, I read every single one, and it means a lot to see how far this community reaches. You know what the problem is with diabetes and high blood sugar? Most people find out way too late, and by the time they do, they have no idea where to even start. That's why I decided to create a free guide. It's called the Glucose Paradox, and inside, you'll find everything you wish you'd known sooner. I'll explain how blood sugar actually works, and why your body sometimes reacts the exact opposite way you'd expect. That's why it's called a paradox. I've also included concrete habits you can start changing right now, even if you know zero about nutrition or medicine. It's free, you can download it in a second, and it might be the single most useful thing you do for your health today. Just click the link in the description to head to the site, drop your email, and get the guide sent straight to you. Don't put this off.